We're going to talk about the future of IVF. Due to socio-demographic trends and increased supply facilitated by new technologies have converged to transform the way a substantial portion of humans reproduce. This session will highlight the societal and demographic trends driving increased worldwide demand for IVF, as well as an overview of emerging technologies that promise to greatly expand IVF utilization. Please welcome the experts who are joining me now to discuss the future revolution of IVF, the new normal in human reproduction. Please welcome Mr. Anubhav Prashant, COO, Apollo Cradle and Apollo Fertility, Mr. Vinesh Gadhia, Senior Partner and Chief Executive Officer for India and Emerging Markets, Black Cap Equity Management, Mr. Abhishek Aggrawal, Chief Business Officer, Birla Fertility and IVF, CK Birla Group, Dr. Kshitiz Murdia, Chief Executive Officer, Indira IVF Hospital, and very soon we'll be joined by Dr. Somesh Mittal, Chief Executive Officer, ART Fertility Clinics. A warm welcome to all our experts. Thank you so much for joining us today to talk about what the future holds when it comes to assisted reproductive technologies. Now, first,
can somebody open the camera for Vinesh? I think his camera is blocked. He just put a message in the chat.
All right. So I'll ask the technical team to please help out.
That's working.
There he is. Mr. Gadhia is with us. So one question that I wanted to start with each one of you to understand, what were the learnings? When the pandemic broke out in March 2020, IVF procedures were halted because they were seen in selective programs and they were just halted. And this brought a lot of heartache for patients because they have been waiting to start their families. And soon enough, these elective procedures were started. But for clinics, for hospitals, they had to deal with this time where they had, on one hand, exasperated patients and on the other hand, stalled revenues. So what was the learning from this period? I would like to ask all of you to very quickly, in a brief fashion, tell us what was the learning from the pandemic period. Abhishek, would you like to go first?
Thank you so much, Anisha. Am I audible?
Yes, please go ahead.
Thank you. I think the pandemic was a challenging phase for the complete healthcare sector. But IVF as a specialty and at least what my experience has been seeing the three waves go by was somewhere taken a little bit by surprise. While hospitals have large workforce and there is a little bit of backup that you always have, in smaller single specialty operations, as most of the IVF clinics follow, you will see that staff conservation while ensuring that the patients are provided continuity of treatment and service come at loggerheads, and it required for us extreme amount of agility, almost daily troubleshooting different situations at different centers of operations. I think one big learning for all of us in healthcare has been that online consultations, way to engage with patients while they are at home, somewhere was a savior for patients and also for the doctors and teams providing them treatment. So that was one big takeaway. And I think the second big shift, at least in my experience, I've seen post the pandemic as well, is that infection control and the ways of working in healthcare in India, at least, have changed permanently, and they have become better and stronger than what we saw pre-pandemic.
So that is definitely to the benefit of the patients, so long as they are patients themselves. Kshitiz, what were your learnings from the pandemic, especially for the ART segment, where there was once a significant disruption and then resuming of all your work?
No, I think the switch off and switch on for IVF labs is a very difficult operationally, I would say, in the embryology lab, because we are tuned to be running 24/7, 365 days a year. So to switch off your operations, get all your machines out, and then to switch on again and get the calibration and everything back on track, the people working back on track was something that took a lot of time internally for us to start training, start making SOPs on how to start working, especially with the COVID around, and a lot of reports coming in that COVID virus could spread through these sperm samples, through the embryos and other things. So I think that was big learning. But I mean, apart from the operational, the HR, the various cost issues that everybody might have faced, I really want to acknowledge everybody in the community, in the group. I think every employee took a step ahead and realized the difficulty that the organization is going through. And I think everybody supported so well the entire organization, the entire company, that we were able to see through that first phase when we were asked to shut down. I think second phase was a little better, I would say, in terms of operationally, when the government allowed the clinics to still function. But first wave was really bad.
Brutal. Anubhav, what was the experience like? And I'm sure the experience wasn't pleasant, was rude, but what were the learnings? What have we understood now? That and how can we prepare for something like this in the future, keeping our patients' interest in mind?
Yeah, hi Anisha. Hi everyone. I think the big learning for everyone was you can never be completely prepared, no matter what plans you have. I think life will throw surprises. So it's important that you start looking back at your processes, start looking at your people from a continuity perspective, because from a business perspective and from operations, it's important to keep the show running. And especially if you're involved with patient care, how do you, like Abhishek said, how do you continue to ensure that patients were connected, the doctors and the patient connection was ongoing, and you continue to ensure that patients who were undergoing treatment, they were able to finish it off. And while new patients who were getting anxious and jittery, their nerves could be calmed down and said, we will come back to you as and when normality resumes. And also, like the other panelists said, safety has now become a primordial concern for everybody, not just for our staff, but also for our patients. So it becomes a new normal for all of us as we move along. So which has also meant changes at the operational level, both from a business side, both from a clinical side, as well as on the lab operations as well. And to safeguard certain off tracks that can happen, a lot of those technological safeguards are being put into place by everybody to ensure that we don't have these surprises in the future.
All right. Dr. Mittal, what was it like for you? What were your learnings from the pandemic?
Thank you so much for this inviting me. I'm Dr. Somesh. I've just joined the IVF panel. I think the people sitting here are much more wiser when it comes to IVF side. For me, it's a new journey, although I have been in healthcare for pretty long. So for me, if you ask me, I think what I've been hearing now from IVF point of view, my view is that same is the problem which entire healthcare faced. There's bad to it, there's good to it. The bad part is that in the IVF side, it's people who can still wait for some more time. So the business will get suffered very badly. So that's one big thing which is there. And unlike other healthcare verticals, the revenues are not that high that you can afford to lose that business, right? So to continue to your business. So I think hats off to the entire group of people around here that during this pandemic, like any other multi-speciality hospital, still there is a lot of profitability and they can absorb the losses to some extent. But same is not the case in my mind to IVF sector. So I think it is a very difficult time for IVF field itself. But I think they've come out well. Second good part, if you ask me on the good side of it, is technology. I think IVF needs a lot of awareness, digital branding, medium and all those. And healthcare that way went in a very positive trend. People have started using healthcare digital as a platform for online consultations to, reaching out to the people. And that is where I think the positive is yet to come, which has started to come already. So that is one plus thing which will happen. And next thing is definitely, yes, infection controls and other processes. Thanks to pandemic, I think it has shown everyone that it is very critical. And also more so with COVID going to affect your, IVF and other procedures and their results is another big thing which is yet to happen. We don't know what it is. So broadly speaking, I think it's a positive now if we go in a right direction. More so with ART law coming in and all those, I think everything will come in. So it's a very jittery time for IVF vertical as such. But hopefully, I think we are in a right trajectory now.
All right, Vinesh, what were your learnings from the pandemic outages?
Good afternoon, everyone. Happy to be here on the World IVF Day. Having spent my 3 decades in the career, I am excited to contribute to the panel. Okay, to your question, Anisha, I think every difficult situation brings out something good to learn for future ready. So out of many learning, I will pick up only 2. The pandemic and the closure made us realize that operational cost efficiency is such an important aspect. So if we keep our business operationally cost efficient, we will be able to survive the rainy days. I think one of the most important learning as CX position in IVF business was that it made us more operationally cost efficient, and it has made us more future savior, future ready. Second big learning was that when suddenly the IVF practice was stopped, the interesting realization was that we can go where patient is available, though they cannot come to clinic, but it brought a very significant digital disruption. So during the closure time of IVF practice, at least I know most of my colleagues here would agree that we went full steam on digital medium, bringing out meaningful content, keeping a very strong connect with patient, and kept on keeping patient encouraged, motivated to take up the treatment as soon as the IVF practice was allowed. So digital disruption, cost efficiency was 2 big learning for me during the pandemic, which also helps us to be future ready. Thank you.
All right, so this brings me to my next question. The pandemic taught us we have to innovate. Of course, the SOPs, basic safety and sanitation and precautions have to be taken, but we have to innovate. And like Vinesh said about bringing the service to the doorstep of the patients has been done in many specialities. To what extent is this true for IVF? If not the entire procedure, because you need specialized intervention. For some tests, medicines, injections, can we have the concept of IVF at home? Anubhav, what do you say?
Well, like most of the specialties, I think, yes, this trend is there in IVF as well. And already, I think we see that a lot of some parts of the initial treatment, like you said, the test, the initial screening, can be done at the comfort of the patients. And more so after the COVID, there is a tendency of couples not to step into the clinics or the hospital unless and until absolutely necessary. So yes, we will probably see some part of the IVF treatment moving more closer to the patients, more closer to where they would want an access, and you will see some bit of adoption happening at the centers. At the same time, there are clear aspects regarding the absolute procedure itself, the monitoring, which probably still needs to be done at a center, right? For which the patients and the couples will still continue to be required to come to the centers. And at the same time, as technology advances and we're getting into innovation where couples can start monitoring their treatment offline, see the results, may not be required to come into the center for counseling, for example, in the future. So we may see an hybrid model coming in, but yes, the core of the science will still happen in the centers. The magic still happens in the IVF centers. Right. So it's difficult to sort of take that.
Yeah, so, this hybrid model is evolving all through healthcare. I'm just trying to understand from the IVF perspective, Abhishek, what is being done digitally or being done at home? Are you still going to labs to get your test done? Do you have home kits? See, even for COVID, we have a home kit and an app, and people are not going to labs for testing of COVID. So are we doing that? Are women able to see when they are ovulating, or some of the other tests that they don't have to call a lab, and hence their expenses are lower? And when it comes to expenses, like if you don't have so much patient walk-in, are you saving on cost? And what about the investments of digital training your staff for digital interaction, or perhaps having more counselors who are available to speak to patients digitally?
Right. So, Anisha, I think there are two parts to your question. Taking the first one up, if you look at IVF at home as a concept and looking at the patient journey overall during the course of the treatment, as I think Anubhav very well articulated, there are certain parts which will never be online, at least what we understand right now practically. There is ultrasound that needs to be done. It's also in the legal and regulatory premise has to be done at an approved location. And then obviously there is a ovum pickup and there is an embryo transfer, sample collections of gametes for both male and female partners. That will always be offline as we understand now. It is only the preliminary assessment that can go online, and that can go at the convenience of the home of the patient. And there, I think what we need to understand when a patient presents with an infertility situation, this assessment and this counseling that happens upfront is the most important part. Slowly, the doctors and the patients both have to mature up the curve in India of interacting online with the same efficacy, with the same impact, understanding each other as they would have done in an offline scenario. A lot of questions patients come up with when they are actually sitting with a doctor, which might or might not come in an online consultation, right? There is a little bit of hesitance to open up to discuss the complete situation. So while it is advancing, and we at Birla Fertility and IVF, we are also seeing more people who actually are coming from outside the cities of our centers to opt for this model, not as a substitute for an offline visit, but rather as an early intervention. I think where this concept of going online will help is not if we start changing the definition from IVF to a more holistic fertility treatment. There is a lot to do in infertility beyond IVF, and I think a lot of psychological support, a lot of pre-workup that a patient needs before they prepare for IVF has started to move online, and I think helping patients manage their diet, their fitness, solving endocrinology problems, all of that could move online very effectively. In India, we are seeing that at nascent stages right now. The uptake from the patient side is also limited. Technologically, it is not a big challenge. I think the
personal preference.
It's a personal preference, and what we pick up from the patient side is whenever there is a consultative requirement for any of us, we still prefer the human touch, the direct interaction over an online situation. So I think that's the trend in the psyche overall. Otherwise, technologically, I don't see a barrier for a large part of the patient journey.
Right. Vinesh, what has it been like in terms of cost for IVF centers, IVF chains? Because if there is less footfall, are you saving any cost, or how has it worked out?
Anisha, I was just thinking about the last question. I could not hear this question very well.
The question is because some of these services have moved to an online mode, even consultation and initial pre-workup. What does this mean for cost saving for the management?
So I still believe that the hybrid model is not yet evolved well in India for us to identify the difference in cost structure. But overall, answering to your question, I would take an example from a company called Prelude in US. It's a digital app only for fertility, and today is invested by a private equity firm and has a valuation over $1 billion. So I think this model is coming where patient will be digitally connected on consultation for counseling for all the tests, and the app or the digital company connects patient with an IVF clinic on the back end, which is a brick and mortar clinic. As rightly said by all my colleagues, patient has to come to clinic. But coming to clinic will be very limited, maybe a couple of times during stimulation for sonography and for the actual procedure. So I see in next 5 years this becoming normal in India. The patient would start taking IVF treatment digitally and will come to clinic only when it is required. And once this model is evolved and it is established, I think there will be, of course, there will be a division of cost structure. As such, consultation, counseling does not dilute too much of cost structure of IVF for the clinic. But more patient logging into a digital platform and then the platform sending patient to IVF clinic, I see it coming in next 5 years.
So does that mean, Vinesh, the business expands even more?
No, it should not expand. It's not more expensive for patient. It's very convenient for patient.
The question is for the group. If you have a platform where low spend, you're not spending to advertise on that platform, but people are, finding you on that platform. Does that mean more bang for your buck? You will get more patients and business expands.
Yeah, of course. It should expand. It's going on that way, and I am sure it's coming. I mean, for any new disruption, I would generally prefer to see what is happening in a mature market, what is happening in developed markets, so that it will come in India today or tomorrow in 5 years, if not 10 years. Then it's already there in US. You take example of Prelude, you take example of IVF Babel, a global digital magazine connecting patients with clinics. You take example of a homegrown company like Fertility Dost. So I think it's coming and it will definitely expand and help, because majority of IVF will happen from home, excepting 2 or 3 visits.
What do you think, Kshitiz? What are your
opinions? No, I just on the last question, I think nothing comes for free. So, I mean, even if
it's not for free. I'm just saying that, a platform is because of technology, people are discovering you without you doing the work.
Yes. So I, being a doctor, I strongly beg to differ from all the panelists from the concept of IVF at home. And I think without compromising, till you have that strong conviction, 100%, that without compromising the quality of care that you can provide to your patients, whether it's in the hospital versus at home, I think it should not be a familiar thing for the patient or for the doctors. And I know the difference when you are consulting a patient digitally versus when the patient is in front of you with a file and you can go through the entire history. All said and done, the entire history would be digitally present on your computer or your laptop. But I feel that disconnect going through that history and talking to that patient simultaneously, back-to-back appointments and all. And I think many regulatory and other ethical concerns also warrant that certain procedures. I think the majority of the procedures, I would say, for a chronic disease like diabetes and hypertension, it could very well move to digital consultations, IoT devices giving you inputs from the patient at home, and then you suggesting some treatments out of it. But I still feel, I mean, that's my view being a doctor. I mean, IVF still best done at the clinic because there are many variables that you need to control. There are certain variables that you can't control, that's beyond your control of a patient or a doctor, that's fine. But even the minutest thing of giving an injection to a patient, what dose actually is being given, how careful you are in titrating that micro milligrams doses to the patient is very, very critical for the entire process.
Dr. Somesh, what would you like to say? Having that direct patient connect, is it a deal breaker? Because for patients, they have the convenience of doing at least a few things at home. And, the entire stress of going, meeting the nursing staff over and over again in 1 month's time is also quite stressful. From a practitioner's point of view, do you think this digital intervention helps?
So Anisha, like Kshitiz, I am a doctor, right? And I've been an administrator for the last 25, 30 years. I've seen the other side. I've been part of many startups which are there in different verticals. So now what my take on this is, as a doctor, if you ask me, yes, a patient should come to me. That doctor-patient relation when you meet is totally different. But if you ask me today, how the healthcare moved in India, just 2 minutes I'll take, is that when corporate hospitals started, which is way back in 2000, that's the time when corporate 1995 odd is when corporatization of healthcare started in India, to my mind. primarily. Before that, it was doctor who were having nursing homes and others. So I'm talking about big corporate hospitals that started. So then what it gave one good part is that it gave what as a doctor we don't know much, on the other side of it, how a patient is managed, hospitality and all those came into being. I think where we are today in IVF space is something like that, which happened in the disruption at that time on hospitals is happening in IVF side now. Although IVF has been there through many chains in India for last 10 years. But I think now the push and the spend which is happening will lead to two things. Number one, technology definitely is the way forward in my mind. Now, how will I connect to answer Kshitiz? I'm not saying that we should not take care of it, but I think there will be vertical which each hospitals might have, that rather than patient walking to you, you go back to them, right? And you do that everything same at their home by your trained staff, which is there, which means that a patient service and patient satisfaction is more important than getting that patient to your clinic. Until and unless a doctor has to see it, why can't rest all things be done at home? Government regulations of ultrasounds are there, but I think with the time to come, all this will also start to evolve and become much patient friendly. So everything will move in my mind, as Vinesh was saying, to home, but with the technology in place, which is there, and all these fertility, those of the world and others will definitely play a significant role, because there is a trust deficit in my mind. I, as a patient, if I'm there, I don't know today whether to go to A, to B, to C. So what I do, I go to all these clinics and make my judgment based on trust. Moment this fertility, those of the worlds and those kind of people come in, they will play as a trust builder for me, and I will go through them, that they will guide me which of the 5-6 centers are one of the best in that city. So I think technology and all these intermediators will definitely play a significant role, whether we want or not. So I think that is what the going forward would be.
Right. Anubhav, you want to add something?
Yeah, I'd like to come in here. So, for example, if you see most of us right now also, we treat a lot of international patients, where the primary workup is absolutely done on a digital platform. You connect with the patients, you assess them, you have a preliminary investigation, etc., done before they actually land up in India. And whether we like it or not, Kshitiz or Somesh, we will have to continue to listen to patients, right? And if the patient wants us closer to their home, their doorsteps, we will have to. Secondly, even before ART law or ART new bill coming in, a lot of centers, including all of us, had IVF centers and satellite centers where patients' convenience could be managed. You don't have to come to the main center every day in, day out, even for injections, for example. It can be done at a center close to you. After ART law, obviously, with level 1, level 2 clinics coming in, that trend will still be there, but definitely there will be in some hybrid. I think the best course for the sector is to be prepared for this. You're on mute, Anisha.
Right. So preparation is the best thing one can do, and keeping up with the reality of today is also quite important. Now I want to talk about how IVF treatment is growing in our country. We've seen many corporate groups backing IVF chains coming up now, as opposed to the previous practice of standalone fertility clinics, which were run by reputed doctors. And it was hard to get appointments, treatments, and they were expensive as well. So what is going to grow faster in the future? Do we see this trend of corporate groups, IVF chains, increase their growth, be faster than the standalone ones? Because of the reputation of the doctor here is very important, especially in this field. The reputation, the success rate. So that is what was the determinant when it came to picking up a center. But now with IVF chains, the costs are coming down. So that is also something that people consider. What do you think is going to happen in the future, Abhishek?
I think with the biggest change that it has happened in the recent past is the advent of ART law. And I think with first time the industry now being regulated properly and the law being enforced, it comes with a lot of processes, rightly so, and a lot of ways of working being defined by the policymakers. In such a scenario, it is very natural that the cost of running an IVF clinic is bound to go up. You will need to have more manpower versus a choice that you could exercise as a standalone clinic. There is defined manpower, there is defined infrastructure requirement, and there are also defined processes that have to be abided by. It's a welcome change and a move in the right direction for the industry overall. But looking at this context, I think it becomes a little difficult for an entrepreneur running their own setup. Of course, they will continue to do good work, and many of them will continue to grow. But a lot of them, I think, will find it difficult and will want to explore other avenues, and hence the corporate base setup in IVF is bound to grow faster than individual based practices. That's my view.
Kshitiz, Dr. Kshitiz, what do you think? What's the future like for standalone IVF clinics?
I think in the country, we need a proper balance between the corporate chains and the standalone clinics, because all said and done, these are doctors who have earned a reputation and name, and their outcomes are pretty good in the overall industry statistics, I would say. So I think a proper balance between both the things should coexist in the country going forward. All we need to ensure, both on the corporate side and on the individual standalone side, is governance, and then the quality of treatment that we can offer to the patients, keeping all the ART regulations in mind. And I think it's the only advantage with the corporate chains could be economies of scale and replicability that, the corporate chains could put in, and the standalone centers might face little difficulty in doing it. But I think existence wise, I think it's a good mix, and it should continue to be the same way it is in the country right now.
Anubhav, what do you think? The way corporate chains are growing, do you think there will be better standards, better technologies, better outcomes with ART treatments in the future if they continue to grow at the pace that they are? The concern, of course, is that some of their practices are not very ethical, they mislead patients, and that is why some of those concerns are there, and that's why you have an ART law as well.
And the Indian outcomes have always been comparable to the best in the world. I don't, or none of us doubt the talent and the outcomes that our doctors and embryologists are producing. Yes, what the ART law has done is create a common minimum platform for everyone. So from a patient perspective, actually it augurs very well, because now as a patient, I'm able to look into an independent registry and see who's reporting what are the actual success rates of each of the centers against what one would like to claim, right? Which has hitherto been the trend in the industry. The second aspect, you can never take a doctor out of a medical profession, right? So the doctor will continue to be at the core of the science. And hence, like Kshitiz said, we need those standalone centers to continue to flourish. Yes, the organized sector will probably continue to grow because it has a very smaller base right now. So what typically would be a 95-5 right now would probably become a 80-20 tomorrow. But I don't think the unorganized or the independent centers are completely going to move away to corporate world.
All right. So that's a variety of opinions coming in. I'm just trying to understand what happens to cost for patients from the patient's point of view. Vinesh, when scale comes in because of these corporate chains of IVF clinics, because we are seeing a lot of interest by investors in backing these chains as well. They only do it because there is a real market. There's a real need of people to answer their healthcare needs. So when you see scale, do you see costs coming down for the patients, even if statistically their success rates may not increase, but because the cost is low, they can try many more times?
So I am a very firm believer of any business, not IVF, which is well governed, well organized, professionally managed, has a better future. It's nothing against standalone or for organized, but an organized business where it is managed professionally with better governance is of course better for patient. And I believe it also brings better clinical outcomes. That's my belief, because the whole business ecosystem is very well managed. In that context, ability of an organized chain of IVF to bring down the cost over a scale definitely is better over a standalone clinic. I don't have any doubt. While coming to the subject of cost, the kind of clinical excellence India is delivering and the kind of customer satisfaction we are delivering in India, I mean, along with my colleagues, I'm just putting it that we would have seen the whole world. I have seen best of the clinics Far East in Japan and best of the clinics in Western world. We are nowhere behind them in terms of infrastructure, clinical outcome, so much better in customer satisfaction and customer handling. In that context, we do IVF in about $2,000, $2,500, which is less than 1/5, 1/4 of the developed world. I don't think cost beyond this will come down in India, because we are on the top in clinical outcome and patient satisfaction, and we are on the bottom in terms of delivering the same service at 1/4 or 1/5 of the cost of a developed world. So I think cost, we are at optimum level in India and will not go down from what it is today.
All right. Costs are optimized at this point in time. What about insurance, Dr. Somesh? Do you think it's still not covered? Most of the ART treatments are not covered by insurance. Do things change there?
So Anisha, I'll put it two different things. First, to answer your question, because I have little difference in the previous ones. But first, I'll answer this. I think insurance is far away at the moment. I don't foresee this happening with whatever knowledge I have in next 4 to 5 years. I don't see insurance going to address this out so easily. Why I'm coming to this is the bariatric, which is one of the another procedures, not of IVF, took long time. That's something which is straightforward, which is there. So I think it is, first we have to reach masses. There has to be more and more people. Awareness has to come. Volumes have to increase. And anything which have a bigger volume, bigger say of the public, then only the law will change and all those will push the insurance companies to start accepting this. So I think that question, to my mind, will take a long time. It will be out of pocket expenditure which will happen. Second thing, coming on the clinical outcome, while we are good and all those, but I feel with little knowledge which I've seen in last 2-3 months of understanding, we may be good, but trust me, in the world market, when you go and stand, are we still there in that market? I think we have to present ourselves that way. As an Indian, we have to present ourselves that we are good in clinical outcomes. That will come only with research, when we present ourselves that our outcomes, our innovations, others are following. Today we are following other people. So I beg to differ in it that we may say that we are 70%, we are 80% success rate. Reality is there's no benchmark on which we test ourselves. So that is where whole trust deficits is coming. So I feel we need to work a lot. This is the segment of healthcare which we have to pump up ourselves, bearing few doctors. I'm not naming that these doctors good result or not, but as an industry wide, there's a lot to do. And more centers now opening up means more and more early stage doctors whose results may not be good are going to enter and start doing work, which means our results are going to go downwards. That is where we need to have our SOPs in place. That's where we need to involve more technology. Our embryologist needs to be more trained. So I think it's a very challenging thing. While we say we are good, but because we are less number of clinics at the moment we all corporate world comes in, means we'll open up 100 clinics, right? And we'll say everywhere else, there is no benchmark of saying what is success. So I think it's a big challenge, and we need to accept this fact that we need to gear up much faster and take it to that level. So that's on the question which others were saying we are up to the mark. I feel we are below them. We have to accept that and take that's what at least I feel, that we have to gear up ourselves. Sorry.
All right. You believe that we still can do better because the benchmarking is a little vague. But no doubt, Indian doctors have had good success in treating many foreign patients, and they have won the trust. They have delivered the goods, which is why more people from abroad continue to come to India. Whether the cost will be determinants of what happens in the future, it's all up for anybody's guess. Kshitiz, Dr. Kshitiz, what do you think will be the impact of the ART law on the growth of the industry? Because, before this, we had self-regulation. Self-regulation was obviously not working. They were unethical practitioners taking patients for a ride, making huge, unbelievable promises. now we have a law coming in to rein in some of these unethical practices. What will be the impact on the growth of the ART industry?
See, I think we've been, and Vinesh and all Anubhav have been with us, and we've been discussing for the past 2-3 years, especially on self-regulation. And I think we as a group took a step that, let's start accreditation internally for at least of all our IVF centers, and let's adhere to a minimum quality standard, minimum way of working, structured SOPs, infection control, ways of reporting every outcomes, whether it is not just related to IVF, but there are many other things that you do during the entire IVF cycle. So I think scaling up your governance level internally, and don't think that it's the ART bill that has come up and somebody would come and audit you and check you and then you do changes to your practice. I think gone are those days. I think you need to start working and not start just talking about internal quality control or governance and other things. So I think that step has to be taken up by the corporates, and all the corporates are doing it. So I feel not a major impact among the corporates who are already following, and even the standalone centers would be following some of them. It's not that every standalone center is not following or doing unethical work. There are many standalone centers. I know personally many doctors who are following all those processes and policies. I think the future is only for corporates or standalone centers who are making sure that they are adhering to a certain basic minimum standard of working, and not just IVF outcomes. It's the way how you handle the patient right from the inquiry point, how you do the entire cycle, and how you interact digitally with them, how you service these patients. I think that will make a big impact. Overall, I think regulation for any industry, I think it shifts the load from more unorganized to organized. And I really don't like these words unorganized, because they portray the standalone center as if they are not doing anything, because all of us have grown from that level. We were all someday in life, we were all one single standalone center, and we've seen the journey now to this level of multiple centers, managing multiple centers. I think people who are following this, I think the business could shift from little bit from the standalone centers or the unorganized sector to the organized sector. And obviously it will bring up a huge cost for people who are not doing these kind of audits or strict checks and compliances within. So I think the overall market could shift, but I don't see a real challenge in the growth of the market, at least for the overall country as such, or for the organized sector. No. You're on mute.
Right. So Abhishek, how do you see this new ART law? And while Dr. Kshitiz is saying that many standalone centers have good ethics, but if you don't follow the rule now, they have penalties to pay, and it is risky now. So does this lead to a shakeout? And does it increase costs for standalone centers?
Yeah, but let me answer the question you had asked, Kshitiz. It's an interesting one, actually. Whenever an industry gets regulated, there is a natural scare that the market being regulated will now become either economies will suffer and will shrink or will become stagnant. I think in this case, in India, where we sit only at 1% of people who require infertility treatment turning up, a large part of that reason is not just awareness, affordability, or accessibility, but also the lack of trust on what happens in IVF. And somewhere with a regulated industry, that trust will slowly go up. And I fundamentally believe more people who need infertility treatments will now have enough faith and confidence to come up to an IVF clinic much earlier on in their cycle, and much earlier, and I think more in numbers, so it will eventually expand the base of people availing treatments in India. So it's a positive step. It will lead to growth of the industry at an overall level. Coming to standalone clinics, the second question you asked, the cost as the law stands will go up, I think, if you were not compliant earlier. on three things, and it varies from, I think, clinic to clinic. If you had manpower which was makeshift, which was not full-time, yes, the cost will go up on manpower. Infrastructurally, the law very clearly defines the minimum common infrastructure required in a level of a clinic. If you did not have that as a clinic, yes, your capital investment will go up. And operationally, to service the process requirements of the law, there might be a couple of hands more needed. So in a nutshell, the cost of running and operating a clinic will go up for everyone.
All right. What I want to now understand is, you've spoken about the growth, the compliance costs, etc. The other parameter is that the growth is going to be strong. We need trained staff. I mean, what good is an IVF center if your embryologist isn't good enough? What good is the IVF center if your lab isn't good enough? Right? So, Anubhav, what is the training investment required for the growth that you're foreseeing in the ART sector? Because there are doctors who believe कि हमने तो 30-40 साल काम करके इतना अच्छा नाम कमाया, इतना अच्छा हम काम करते हैं. आजकल के नए नए डॉक्टर आते हैं, क्या स्पेशलाइजेशन है, कि क्या ट्रेनिंग है, 6 महीने का वो सर्टिफिकेट कोर्स लेके ART शुरू कर देते हैं. So how do you counter these kind of, problems?
So I think the new law is addressing both these aspects. One, the existing set of practitioners, both clinicians as well as embryologists, working in those centers. There is a provision which has been made on that, who can continue to get qualified and get registered under the new law. And at the same time, for new practitioners or wannabe embryologists, because suddenly we suddenly see a lot of surge in people wanting to become embryologists, because everybody sees growth happening, and which is good for the space. There is a common minimum, again, a guideline which has been laid down very clearly, who can become an embryologist, who can qualify to become a gynecologist, working in an IVF center. So I think those lines are fairly drawn. Obviously, they will continue to get evolved as we move along. So yes, that poses a big manpower challenge for everyone, because if all of us were to do what Kshitiz has done at 100 centers plus, it obviously requires a lot of manpower, a lot of good manpower, and you just cannot depend on doctors and embryologists available out there. You will have to, every center or every larger chain will definitely have to focus on creating their own training program, reskilling program, and continuous training program to ensure that you have good adequate pool available. And obviously the pool would be made available for the entire industry. So yes, you will see a lot more training programs, a lot more fellowship programs coming up, both at the university levels. I think there is a lot of plan from the universities also now start offering courses both for clinical as well as embryology fellowships. And similarly on the private sector side, you will see a lot of centers opening up for not just for the in-house practices, but also creating pool for the industry at large.
Vinesh, are enough investments being made by corporates who have these IVF chains, because they know the demand is going to go up? So might as well start training people now. Are they making enough investments, or is it going to be poach the best, whatever the cost?
My strong belief is that in corporates, all of us are making a lot of investment in making ourselves future ready. I'll give you an example. I was one of the founding member of one of the earliest corporate in India in 2011. And very early, one thing what we realize is the shortage of embryologists we will have in India. Even today, if you ask me, India has highest number of gynecologists in the world, 35,000 plus. Half of them aspire to become IVF specialists. So to get 6,000-7,000 gynecologists to become IVF specialists through a one-year fellowship program is not going to be difficult. India has one of the best colleges in healthcare administration. We will get good staff to manage hospitals. So we have a lot of talent in India. The biggest shortage will be embryologists. And way back in 2011, we had set up a very robust training program with our Spanish partner, who are the world leader in IVF. And we trained, today I can feel proud that there are at least 100 plus embryologists in India, which were trained in my previous organization. Even today, if you ask me in my current position or in current company, what we aspire to start is a school of embryology with a reputed university in India and abroad. So we all are aligned, and we will put in a lot of effort, investment for trained manpower required for a very robust growth, which is going to come in this decade in IVF in India.
All right, very quickly, we are at the close of the show and our summit. I'm going to take a short concluding remark from all of you. Today is the World IVF Day. Kshitiz, let me start with you. How do you foresee, ART treatments in the future, and what hope do they have for patients?
I think for the future, what we are looking at as a group, and everybody should be working on it, is entirely digitizing the entire patient journey at multiple touch points, so that one, we can serve the patient at ease. Second, we have all the records with us, because now it's become a mandatory requirement to submit all the records to the authorities every month. So I think one aspect is on that. And second, very important aspect, we are looking at how do we move more and more subjectivity to objectivity, wherein all the clinical decisions, the embryology lab decisions could be objectively made through machine, which would bring about much more transparency, and how we can pass that data to the patient so that they also realize what is the decision making happening in their cycles. So I think one is on digitizing the patient journey, second is moving towards objectivity, and third, I think I'll mention the another important thing is to have technology being used to the best to reduce the complications, which could involve electronic witnessing that all the corporate chains are quickly adopting. So any kind of goof ups, I think the last panel that was being discussed at the last 5 minutes, I think that is very important. Using technology to reduce complications of any nightmares that could happen in the lab.
Okay, or errors. Dr. Somesh, what would you like to say in conclusion? How do you see the growth and the future of the ART industry?
So ART industry in India, I think here it's just a start in my mind. I think it's a big thing to happen. If anything in healthcare, I think it's an IVF which is going to go to the next level. That's one. From our side as an ART fertility clinics, I feel what we are focusing on is just one and one thing, that is an outcome. We feel outcome which a person can trust. That's the one which you are focusing on, which is an outcome driven. And third thing which is important is accessibility and affordability. We are working very hard to make sure that it is accessible to each and everyone. Outskirts, how we can do it using digital platform technology, that is one. And on outcome, we are very, very strong. We want to focus on outcomes, whether we need leaders from outside to come and train us or others, especially embryologists and others. That is our focus on number one, which is there. And we are not cutting cost in that at any corner, whether it's a media which we use it, whether it's a technology in the labs which we have internally. I think that's where we need to spend time to get our trust. So we are working on that, I think. But overall, I think IVF is here to go in a very next level. 2.0 is already started. All the best to all of us.
Right. Vinesh, what would you like to say in your concluding remarks?
So Anisha, on the World Fertility Day, I would like to conclude from my side is that on the one side today our economy is growing very fast on demographic dividend of highest young population. On the other side, we have alarmingly reducing fertility replacement rate. I think as a fertility industry, we have a lot to contribute, helping 50 million plus infertile couples in India to achieve their dream of parenthood in the most transparent and ethical way, and possibly the most affordable way, which will help our young population keep growing, which will help our Indian economy keep growing. It will help India to become a little more happy and to contribute to our happiness index along with the economy. There is so much which we can contribute in the coming decade to the country and to the world.
All right. Abhishek, what would you like to say in your concluding remarks?
I think in agreement with my fellow panelists so far, but one important thing I'll add on is we need to start looking at IVF more holistically and broaden the definition in the true sense of ART to other ranges of fertility treatment. Number two, I think using technology to improve success rates for the patient, not just for IVF, but overall end outcome for a couple. And number three, reducing the cost of treatment for infertility.
Right. And that will be good news if it becomes more affordable and accessible for patients. Anubhav, what would you like to say in your concluding remarks?
Yeah, 2022 is already a game-changing year. I think with the new law coming in the country, I think we will continue to look at this as a pre-22 and post-22. Which and adding to that, India has always led in terms of the cost innovation. So it's time that we look at that from the industry as well, and continue to ensure that the treatment is accessible and both affordable for the patients. And from accessibility, again, from all our perspectives, we will have to, I'll say, evolve the way we reach out to our customers, the customers reach out to us, they access treatment, and then how we deliver treatment. So on hybrid model, whether we all like it or not, is bound to come. So let's all be future ready.
All right. Thank you all for joining us